Hello, my friends. It's a rainy day in Arizona. I love it. So recently I had a philosophical debate with some people about evil. Specifically, it was regarding the argument about how God could exist if evil exists. I'm not going to go into that right now, but it did cause me to start thinking about evil within the context of writing and creating a story. And it made me reflect once more on what I feel evil is. And how I would describe that and define that, and what the implications would be to my characters in my story. I'm not a dualist. See, a dualist, of course, believes that there are two equal and opposing forces in the world, in the universe, good and evil, and they balance each other out. And there's kind of two different kinds of dualists. There's the real what I would call the real dualists, who are Zoroastrians, and they believe that good will overcome evil in the end, but that right now we're in a constant state of battle between good and evil. But it's like Zoroastrians basically believe in two gods, a good god and an evil god, and they're battling each other. Whereas Taoists, I would actually say that Taoists aren't really dualists, but they believe that what we call good and evil are two just natural forces that will always be there and are always in the world all around us, and they just balance each other out. Now, I see evil not as a force in itself. So neither of those dualist approaches really work for me. I see evil as the lack of something good that should exist in an intelligent being. So for intelligent beings, we start kind of at this small point of things that we initially know, whatever that is. And we grow. As we learn and we experience, we grow. And in this, let's say we have this circle that represents the entirety of what we know, right? Now, in a good person, in a mentally healthy person, in a moral person, as that growth happens, it is balanced. It goes in many directions at once, right? And it doesn't skip over places. It gradually, outside of this line, this circle, is everything that this person doesn't know, doesn't understand. Within it is everything this person does know and understand. And as this circle grows, what can happen is sort of a bubble will form, where someone should have learned something in this journey of enlightenment, of learning, of growth, but they did not. And when that happens, that is when evil comes into existence. So it's not really even a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of knowledge that you should have already obtained, considering the other things that you know. And I feel that is how evil comes into being. And that is how you see evil in the characters that I write in my stories. And so I don't see evil as something that exists in and of itself, but I do see it as something that exists as a lack of goodness that should be there, considering other good things that exist. Now, as that circle grows, you can say like, oh, this person doesn't know this thing way out here, but that's okay. But he doesn't, because he doesn't really know anything else beyond that either. So it's not a matter of danger. But when he doesn't come to know something, but then he does come to know things that are maybe more advanced, more complex, without having learned that more basic thing, that is when evil happens. And I think any situation of evil can be described in that way. Now, my characters, I would say that, and I think this applies to basically all stories and all villains, I say there are three different kinds of villains. I would have, first, just kind of the rebel villain, who just sort of wants to watch the world burn. Of course, the Joker in the Dark Knight would be the the one example of that a lot of people would think of. And I think he's great in that respect as a villain. There are people who they just reject everything. They are angry at being born, at having been born. I remember what was it, Curly in Tombstone? I think that was his name. He was a gunslinger, and Doc Holliday is talking about how he's out for revenge, and Wyatt Earp asks him, like, revenge for what? And Doc Holliday says, for being born. You know, there are these villains. They don't have any specific goals. They just want to cause chaos and see the world burn, because in the end, they're just angry that they exist. So that's the first kind of villain. That's the most basic kind of villain, I think. Then you have villains who honestly see themselves as heroes, who are almost heroes. And I think one of the best examples of this for me is the operative in Serenity. If you've seen Serenity, I love the operative. Oh, if you've seen the stuff back here, this is the maze. This is what remains of the maze that I built for Halloween. We had a bunch of kids running out here. Anyway, so the operative, he has so many qualities of a hero. He's almost a hero. He's very heroic in many ways, but there are just some things about him that are just a little off. Like I said, there are those things that he should have learned, that he should have come to understand but didn't, and that caused him to become a villain, even though he was so close to being a hero. But so there's kind of I would call it kind of the heroic villain, the villain that is charismatic, the villain that is inspiring in ways, but who is still in the end fighting for something that is wrong. And then you have what I would call kind of the warlord villain. You know, the guy who basically just is out for power. He just wants power. It's like, you know, maybe like Emperor Palpatine or something like that. You know, he wants to go and obtain as much power as he can, and he may have in some ways he may be similar to the rebel villain. In other ways, he may be similar to the heroic villain. But in the end, what he wants is power. And I think with these people, when you look at their motivation, in the end, if you get down as deep as possible and really see the root of all of this, their motivation is a realization of their own vulnerability. At some point in their life, they were very vulnerable and they were hurt because of that vulnerability. And that taught them that the most important thing to them is to obtain power so that others cannot do that to them anymore. And that's really all they care about in the end. They seek power because they have been hurt. And they know that you can keep yourself from being hurt by having power. And so this pursuit of power becomes the most important thing to them. And they may not realize that, but that is what's going on. So yeah, those are the three types of villains that I have in my stories, and that's how I view evil. I don't view it as a thing in itself, but I do feel that it is a real concept. I'm not someone who would say that evil doesn't exist. It does. It just doesn't exist in the way that other things exist. Anyway, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Can you think of any other types of villains? Do you like my definitions? Do you think that my definitions can be improved? Let me know, and I'll talk to you in the next video.